Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Shukri Ali, and I'm the Business Development Manager here at SortSpoke. Today's webinar will be 20 minutes long, and we'll leave 10 minutes at the end for Q&A. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat box. And if you have any trouble with audio, please click on the raise your hand button, which will alert us, and we'll be able to fix the audio issue. The webinar is being recorded and will be available for download on our website, and you'll also all receive a link to the recording right after the webinar. Thanks again for joining us, and I'll turn it over to Craig and Brandon, who will take us through the webinar.
Thanks, Shukri. I'm Craig Mauchan, VP Sales at SortSpoke, and joining me is Brandon Robinson, Director of Customer Success. Just by way of an agenda, I'll do a few slides, keep them to a minimum. I want to show you the system with the demo, share some final thoughts with you, and then as Shukri mentioned, we'll have time for a Q&A at the end of the webinar. We attended the Money 2020 conference in Las Vegas this year. Just some overall impressions. Met lots of great people to start out with from many organizations. They all had a variety of problems that they're trying to solve, and the main goal in mind here that everybody has is, how can I make my business better? We're really glad you could join us today, and without further ado, let's get into it. Over to you, Brandon.
Thanks so much, Craig. I'm just going to go through a few slides, as Craig said today, everybody, and we're going to give you a demo of SortSpoke. Leave some time at the end to have a conversation, any questions that you might have. So feel free, as Shukri said, to go ahead and put those into the question section in the webinar, and happy to answer any questions that you might have. We're focusing today on lending and lending examples, and where SortSpoke helps in different kinds of lending examples. SortSpoke is a data extraction tool. It's cloud-based. We use AI and machine learning to help you extract data from any kind of document, whether it's a heavily structured document, very unstructured document like a contract or a lease, or things that are more of the semi-structured but high variety sort of documents that you'll see today in the lending example. We do this to help teams that have a bunch of human beings already doing this work today do it much better than they are, and be able to scale and have more capacity without adding more human beings to the process. I mean, typically you have this floor of people in an office building somewhere here in North America doing this work. It's very expensive. It's highly specialized labor, and they're generally doing this slightly more mundane task of the data entry and the analysis. When they could be focused on the higher value work, I'm thinking of underwriters or adjudicators, loan adjudicators or actuaries doing this kind of job. And no matter how good any of us are when we're doing data entry, we all make mistakes when we're typing. By using SortSpoke, you can start to reduce a combination of these challenges. Specifically for lending teams, there's a couple of places where we help today, whether it's commercial lending or residential lending, secured or unsecured, mortgages and auto loans. We can cover kind of the cross-section of application forms and their supporting documents. And the intent in that is to say, there are some times where you have application forms that are already digital, but there are the supporting documents that come along with those packages that you do need to process. That's a good fit for SortSpoke, primarily on the supporting documents. We can help you with the variety and the real world kind of messiness of those supporting documents, whether it's a proof of income or if it's a proof of insurance or it's something like a home inspection or a commercial property valuation. We can help you get to a place where you're getting more consistent results and save yourself some time and be able to get more work done with the same team that you have today. We're a little different than some of the other technology solutions out there. We kind of take all the hard work and we make it a little bit easier. You can process lots and lots of different kinds of document varieties with us. That's not a problem. In some other examples, you may have to set up templates or rules, and it's very laborious to kind of set up and maintain those. We don't have that challenge, and we'll show you today how that works. We can train it. You can train it yourself, and that's user-driven. So it's subject matter expert-driven, not IT, not consulting. Not your data science team. You give SortSpoke to your users, and they sit down and make SortSpoke work to their needs. And you can get it up and running in hours and days, not in weeks and months, and hundreds of thousands of samples that are pre-trained or anything of that nature. You will sit down and have production-ready data on your first document. And as SortSpoke sees more and more examples of those documents, you'll actually start to get suggestions and automation and efficiencies very, very early on. I'll show you some examples of that shortly. How it works is you're going to choose any kind of document, whether it's a contract, whether it's an invoice, whether it's a loan application or a supporting document, and you're going to put it into SortSpoke. You don't set up any templates. You just get started by creating your fields of information and then showing SortSpoke where those examples are by using your cursor. And then you're going to let SortSpoke start to think about it. As you continue to go through your documents and process more and more of them, SortSpoke's machine learning starts to think about the examples that you've shown it, and will get to the place where it starts making suggestions for you on the values that you're trying to extract. That's when your job as the user is fundamentally going to change from doing data entry to doing quality control or quality assurance on the information that you're being provided by SortSpoke. Our job is to give you automation. Your job as the user is to focus on the accuracy and quality of the data and do all of that faster and more consistently than you've been able to do it manually. Pretty straightforward process. You're going to upload your documents. You can get documents into SortSpoke a number of different ways. Today, I'll just show you kind of the most simple straight web upload, but there's also APIs and integrations with other technologies like document management systems or cloud storage solutions. You then just get started. You know, your team sits in front of it, as I said earlier, and they start to QA the results that SortSpoke starts to give you. Your team very intentionally will check every document, every field. That's to maintain compliance and the focus on accuracy. And then every time you complete a document, you'll have the ability to take the structured data that's now come out of those documents and use it for a downstream purpose, like loading it into another system, like an underwriting system, putting it into a workflow or an RPA system to continue a process, or even just to take an Excel file out and be able to start to work on comparing the financial results for a company if you were doing a commercial loan or something. So with that said, let me give you a quick demo of the system. Just going to flip over to SortSpoke here. SortSpoke is a cloud-based system, as I mentioned, so everything is online. Your team can sit in front of SortSpoke from their desks. And as I mentioned, there's that linear workflow process. First, you import your documents, then you sort them into those different types. And you can see I've got a number of different types here along the side. And as SortSpoke starts to see more examples of the documents and you start to sort them, SortSpoke actually starts to learn about the context of those documents and helps you sort them or classify them on the fly. You take your documents from sort and you say, yep, these are the documents that I'd like to work on and they're correct. And then it moves it over here to what we call the extract tab, and this is where you do the balance of your work. You can see here, I've just loaded some financial results, from a couple of different examples of financial results. And SortSpoke's actually at the place now for this type of document that it's providing me suggestions on the different pieces of information that are in this document. What you can see here on my screen is that SortSpoke has made suggestions for me for a couple of different fields that I've been working on. I've probably done 20 or 25 documents at this point. And it's starting to pull out a bunch of different information. One of the things that people always ask us for in this kind of example, though, is how can I pull information out of a consolidated financial statement? We have the ability to take out single fields, and they could be any combination of single values or dates or addresses or entire paragraphs. That doesn't make any difference to us, but you can also pull out entire tables of information. You do this very simply just by drawing a box around the table you want to extract. So if this was the consolidated financial statement that I wanted, and I wanted 1 year data, all I do is draw a box. SortSpoke starts to think about that and make suggestions as to where the lines and rows need to be, and I press populate table. This gives me kind of this example of what the output will look like and gives me the opportunity as the user to focus on making sure the quality of the data that it's pulling off the page is as accurate as possible. And you can see as I go through the different fields and click on it, it actually allows me to eyeball it directly live in the system, in the document, as well as what I'm seeing down here is what the extraction will look like. If there was any mistakes, this is an opportunity where I could go and correct it, but everything seems okay. So I'll go ahead and say accept. These all look good, so I'll just go through and do a review. See, these are all good, and if there was a mistake here, this is the opportunity when I would go ahead and make some changes. If that was the incorrect date, for instance, I would remove this suggestion. I'll show you how we do that in a sec. And once I'm done, I press the accept document button. This then allows me to download an example of that output file. Let me just go ahead and show you how we do that. So I'll just show you an Excel file for now. So in the time that we've been on the demo today, I've got the document in the system. I've got the document ready for download. I've actually processed it and extracted not just some of those simple kind of tombstone values about the information itself, and it's been formatted in this report for me, but I was also able to pull out an entire table that is the consolidated financials. This would be really helpful if I wanted to then take this information and put it into a model where I'm working in Excel to adjudicate a loan, to work on the risk, to value a property, to do an audit in professional services engagements, whatever the situation might be. In just a couple of clicks and in a minute or so, I've been able to take out all of the data, and now I'm able to, stop focusing on that data extraction part. I have faith and confidence that the data is as accurate as it can be because I've kept that human being in the process, and now I can go ahead and use it. Let me show you that one more time. So you start by having a document in the system. You go through and you make sure that the suggestions that you're getting from SortSpoke are correct. In the event that something was incorrect, let's say I didn't think that was the best place to get the name of the company from, I thought maybe it's from somewhere else. All I do is I just use my cursor to highlight that value. And if it was a single value, if it was a number, if it was a whole bunch of paragraphs, SortSpoke's actually going to learn from that example and start to make suggestions. It's going to update the learning model on the fly. It's a continuous learning system. And by doing that, SortSpoke's actually going to allow you to handle variations. It's going to allow you to work on a number of different examples of kinds of documents without having to do any coding or rule setup. You literally just sit in front of SortSpoke and you annotate and extract the values that you're looking for, including these tables. And the same thing, I'll just go through and make sure that my data looks okay. And generally, this is the highest value task that the users can do in these processes. And once I'm done, I'll make sure that everything is good and I'll press accept. So you can see that it's very, very intentional. It's very straightforward. It's meant to be a good user experience. I'll move on from commercial lending into some other examples. If you're looking at a mortgage or something related to it, we've got some redacted examples of real world documents here where proof of insurance comes in. And the cool thing about SortSpoke is even though all of these documents that are in here basically say the same thing, the layout's very different, the position on the page is very different. We're able to extract the data and train SortSpoke to help pull the information off of these documents, even though there is an extreme amount of variety that comes in through these. And the really cool thing about this is when we're not using redacted documents is it saves a lot of time and it reduces a lot of errors when trying to match up these policies with the mortgage or the application that it's being processed for. The users don't have to rely on making that linking anymore. The data that's on these pages can be used as a next step from a business rule standpoint to help automate that as a post process to just take away another task that the users don't have to do themselves. It can be coded into the system. Also, what's really cool is when you have documents that kind of look like this that are not always the greatest quality. There's an example here where I can't actually pull off some of the data because the information is a little bit garbled because of the formatting, but the users always have the ability to be the last line of defense and type in information themselves. You can see that combinations of pulling the information directly off the page and making adjustments to original information or manually typing in data is kind of the best of all worlds. So the users get to make the final decision on document quality and information that can be extracted off of the documents on the fly without having to call for support. We also handle these kind of semi-structured documents where you get a little bit of information that's in these forms, everything down to checkboxes. And SortSpoke actually helps you learn whether or not a checkbox is checked or unchecked. So as a suggestion, we'll say, hey, this checkbox we think is not checked. We think this checkbox is checked. And then it continuously learns on that example too. So it saves you time from having to go and hunt and peck for all these values. And these true false values will come out downstream and allow you to use them for the next step. How you actually select values, you can see here that we didn't get suggestions on number of payments. I'll just go ahead and use my cursor to grab these few values. This is the user experience for SortSpoke. You sit down, you know what you're looking for, you just start to find it. And as you continuously process these documents, you get to the place where SortSpoke is making these examples suggested values for you. And then your job is to go through and QA them. A couple of other quick examples. We've got some kind of insurance for auto here. You can see how you can imagine the variety we see of these. But SortSpoke makes it very simple to learn this very structured kind of stuff and helps you get through these documents as quickly as possible. And after you've completed that process, you just hit accept all cells because you can see everything all in one place, and then you're able to move on to your next document. Finally, one of the other things that's really cool about SortSpoke is you can do a combination of different documents that come in a package. So if I had an auto contract and a proof of insurance and some surety or financial responsibility documents coming in all at once, I've actually split these all out of a PDF on the fly and turned them into individual documents in SortSpoke. So it allows me to take an entire client's worth of documents or package and process them all at once. And I can do this from combinations of structured data, So the stuff that's a little like checking for signatures and finding dates and all that sort of stuff, I can do all that stuff as the user and still get the high quality output that we need to use downstream. So at a really high level, just to recap, SortSpoke is send your documents in, you sort them into their different types. That's where you can create different kinds of documents, and SortSpoke actually starts to learn the difference between these types of documents on the fly based on your instruction. And then you then take that information, take those documents and start to extract the pieces of information that you want from them. And you have complete control over what fields you want to create. If in this example, I wanted to add the other company. This is all you have to do to set up a new document or a new field. And then the cool thing here is because you as the user is now in control, as things change and update over time, you can actually just go ahead and create the fields and maintain that yourself. And as you show SortSpoke more and more examples of new fields, it'll actually start to learn and help you adjust those on the fly as you keep going. Finally, all of this culminates in hitting this big accept document button down here, and you get the data output file. It can come out in a couple of different formats. As I mentioned, you have the opportunity to look at it as a JSON file. You have the opportunity to look at it as an Excel file. And then you can use all of that data downstream to power your next process, whether that process is going into a database, going into an application, or if it's going into an RPA to further a workflow. That's SortSpoke, guys. I'm going to hand it back over to Craig, and we'll go through a couple of more examples of where SortSpoke might be able to help. Again, the question and answer panel is open. If there's any questions that may have come up through this, go ahead and jot them in there, and we'll cover them off in just a few minutes. Craig?
Thanks, Brandon. So I think what we'll do is just pick up and give you a little bit of mass real results from some of our customers. This is a customer who processes commercial applications. They were taking about 10 minutes to process these applications manually. After getting into SortSpoke, they got that time down to 1.5 minutes. So significant and very real and very quick uplift in productivity. The other benefits that accrue along the way are the reduction in manual errors, because now what you've done is you've given the tool to your subject matter experts, the best people in your group, and they can now focus on data quality as opposed to the mundane work of hunting and pecking for information. As I mentioned, the productivity lift, in many cases what happens as well is that the work that is being done without SortSpoke with SortSpoke can be done with a lower cost team. So for example, if your insurance underwriters are processing applications, you can shift that work down to lower cost teams and keep those underwriters focused on underwriting business and driving new business in. And finally, the flexibility that comes with SortSpoke, you have the ability at the user level to adjust to new documentation or any adjustments in existing documentation on the fly. Just to drill down a little bit further, this is again masked results of the files or the outputs that we provide to customers after a POC. The blue and the purple lines are the accuracy that SortSpoke is achieving from the very first document through to, in this case, there were 70 documents processed. And the red line shows the time to process the document. So again, this is something we would provide you at the conclusion of your POC, which shows you the two main benefits that SortSpoke provides, which is time to process and ultimately the accuracy that the system is achieving in a very short period of time. One of the other benefits that comes along with SortSpoke is better regulatory compliance, and it's all about keeping the human in the loop. And the benefit here is that what you've done is you have maintained that subject matter expertise. You've armed them with a very powerful tool that does that mundane work and allows them to focus on the quality of the data. And there is a significant benefit here from the standpoint of the combination of AI technology and human expertise. And the contrast to that is that we're very different in that sense than a fully automated solution, which has that black box problem that many organizations want to try and avoid. So how do you work with us? So it's really very simple. Book a discovery call. Let's kick off the process. We'll help you identify a good use case. Once you've done that, we want you to test the system. We want your people to be hands-on keyboards for a period of time to test the system and to see how well it works on your documents. As I mentioned earlier, we will help you with a review of the benefits of the statistics of your POC in order that you can build a business case. And finally, we will help you ramp up into production. And literally, you can be doing this entire process within 1 quarter so that you can start developing ROI as fast as possible. So where else do we help? We focused our comments during this discussion in the banking and particularly in the lending area, but we also help customers in insurance, with life, property, casualty, specialty lines, in professional services, in audit, accounting, and tax, and legal and consulting. And we also help with the innovation and back office aspects of your business as well. One final thought, and I've touched on this a few times, but I think it bears repeating, and that is that your greatest asset are your human experts, are the folks that know your business and know your customers the best. And what SortSpoke does is it allows you to combine the very best of AI technology to automate that mundane work and leave those people to be focused on the most important parts of your business.
So hey folks, this brings us to the question and answer portion of the webinar. The first question is, how many documents do I need to train SortSpoke?
That's a good question. I think it really depends kind of on the situation or the use case that you're trying to use SortSpoke for. In sort of the most simple examples, you saw some relatively simple examples in there today. You can train it on 30, 40, 50 documents. Some of the more complex examples that we see, very unstructured documents like contracts, leases, and agreements, things like that. Depending on how many fields you want to pull out, that can generally take 100 or 200 documents. That's kind of the high watermark. I don't usually recommend for a single document that you need to do more than 100 or 200 documents to get started. But every situation is a little different. That's why our team will work with you as part of a selection process to understand kind of what the right mix is. It's a little different when you're pulling out 10 fields from a document as opposed to pulling out 150 fields from a document. So there is that nuance to it. But just blanket statement, I mean, I don't expect that it takes more than 100 or 200 documents of any sort to start to get a really good sense of, first you'll see some automation, but you'll also get a sense of what level of efficiency you'll get from that document type if you were to continue to work with it.
And the next question is, what is the onboarding process for my team to get trained on SortSpoke?
Yeah, cool. As Craig said, it's kind of a process where we like to work collaboratively with you, help you pick a use case first is kind of the first most important thing, so we can centralize all that around a real world example. We'd work with you to provide advice and guidance on how best to use SortSpoke to deploy it, and we'd actually have your team involved in doing hands-on keyboard work as soon as possible in that process. Really, the best thing to do is to give us a call, drop us an email, and we can schedule a time to chat about how to pick a use case. But typically, to learn how to use SortSpoke takes about 15 minutes. It really depends on the subject matter expertise of the documents and the process that you're working on. That's the hard part. That's where your experts come in. We can help them get up and running on SortSpoke in an hour or two, no problem.
And the next question is, where is your data center?
We are currently hosted on AWS. We have data centers both in Canada and the United States. So if there is a consideration around what location or jurisdiction you need the data to stay in or not go in, you can have it set up in either of those two locations. Some of our other customers do ask us for alternative arrangements. We're also happy to discuss those on a case-by-case basis.
And the final question is, can you process handwriting?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. I get asked that all the time. So typically, my answer to that is we shy away from handwriting examples. We're not any better at handwriting than most other people, but there are situations where some combination of machine-generated text and handwriting in a document, we can still help you save time. A great example is if someone's written in a date or their name or an address and the rest of the information on the document is going to be pulled out was machine generated. You can still use SortSpoke to help you with that. It's kind of a balancing act. I'm happy to discuss that some more. But if it's primarily a handwritten document, if it's an application form that's only handwriting, that's probably not a great fit for SortSpoke, but I'd be happy to review those. We'll tell you pretty straight if we think things are good for SortSpoke or not when we speak with you. So as I said, I do encourage you to reach out to have a quick conversation with us because we're pretty honest and candid about where we think we might fit and where there might be opportunities to try other things.
Well, this brings us to the end of our webinar today. Please keep an eye out for our next webinar. Thank you again all for joining. And as always, if you have any questions, please contact us at sales@sortspoke.com. Thank you again.